Ich lerne seit ungefähr 9 Jahren Deutsch. Ich war in der Höhle und zurück. Ich habe die Fälle gelernt. Ich beherrsche. Okay, nein, das habe ich nicht. Aber ich bin ziemlich gut im der, die, das geworden. Ich kann Wörter wie Herausforderung oder Eichhörnchen ohne Probleme aussprechen. Also ich würde sagen, ich weiß a thing or two über das Deutsch lernen. I even recently up and decided to move to Germany, which is why my apartment looks so German all of a sudden. I'm always somewhere else. Y'all know that. I'm here today to tell you, a person that wants to learn German or wants to get better at learning German and stop sucking at it, how to cut through the bullshit and how to actually feel some progress. Spoiler, this is not how you do that. Memorizing this does not help you, but we'll talk about that later. Something I find super important, especially when you're a beginner in German, is learning nouns in a more complete way. When it comes to learning vocabulary in German, a lot of times you can just pick things up without thinking about it too much, you know, like, oh, a new adjective, oh, a new preposition, cool, right? But with nouns specifically, you have to be a lot more intentional about learning them, especially when you first encounter them, so that you can avoid a lot of heartbreak and a lot of stress and a lot of whatever later on. So what I mean by that is, first of all, learning its gender when you first learn the words. So the der, die, das, I know we all hate it, but you have to do it. And also learning the plural. So you're learning the noun a lot more completely and you'll be better off later on. Because like if you just learn the word Ente, for example, for duck, later on you're going to try to use that word in a sentence and point to a duck and say, oh, it's a duck. And you're not going to know what article to use. So you're just going to sound like a toddler. Sorry. And additionally, if you don't learn the plural form or how to form plurals with certain words, you're going to only ever be able to talk about one duck at a time. And that's a world I don't want to live in. I'm kidding. But seriously, the point of learning the plural form when you learn a noun is because there's a lot of different ways to form the plural in German. It's not just like English where you just tack on an S or an ES and you call it a day. There's, you know, in German you add an E, you could add an in, you could put an umlaut in the middle of the word and then add ER on the end. There's a lot of ways to do it, and every word will have its own specific way of forming a plural based on, you know, several factors about the word itself. So if you want to talk about multiple clocks, it's not die Uhren, it's die Uhren. Like, it'll sound weird if you don't form the plural the right way. No one's gonna kill you, but like, it's gonna sound weird. So you should learn those different ways of how plurals are formed in German and learn like what to look for in a word so that you know what kind of plural it'll take. So yeah, to save yourself the pain of playing catch up later on and like trying to have to learn all of this information after you already know the word, learn the gender and learn what it looks like in the plural. Now, pronunciation. If we talk about pronunciation, these are the top 3 things you should be doing to improve your pronunciation. And I'm talking more about like general habits. Obviously, the biggest thing you should do for your pronunciation is to focus on the sounds that are difficult for you. Practice them with yourself, practice them with tutors, understand how to physically make them with your mouth. Obviously, you need to be doing that. That's the best thing you can do overall. But I'm talking more just like general habits to improve your pronunciation over time. No surprise, you have to listen a ton. You can't learn to produce a language without first listening to hours and hours of it and, you know, absorbing that pronunciation kind of passively. You could listen to a number of things like podcasts. These are my favorites. You can watch YouTube channels. These are my favorite YouTube channels for German. Or you can just watch German news daily with something like Tagesschau. And listen both actively and passively. It's all worthwhile listening. All listening is worthwhile. You know, whether you're sitting down at your desk and actively listening and taking notes, or if you're just listening to something while you do dishes. Just flooding your brain with what German sounds like and hearing the sounds that are difficult for you over and over is going to subconsciously train your brain to pronounce them better. You should also try the shadowing method in German. It's basically like a mimicry method where you just repeat what you hear, you know, with a listening material. Just repeat what you hear exactly as you hear it. The pronunciation, the cadence, you know, the filler words, whatever. It is, you know, I would say shadowing is more of an intermediate to advanced method. So if you're more like, you know, beginner or lower intermediate, something I would recommend is going to this website called Youglish. And it sounds kind of misleading. It's not just for English, it's also for like 20 plus other languages, including sign languages. So with this tool, you can look up specific words in your target language and hear how it's pronounced in like, you know, the context of a YouTube video. And you can just scroll through a lot of different videos. So if there's a specific sound that you're struggling with, look up words that have that sound or that letter and mimic after that. Just, you know, these small sentences and these small clips of native speakers. But my biggest tip for improving your pronunciation in German is to speak German often. I know that sounds like counterintuitive. You're like, wait, but if I'm not good at speaking yet, why should I speak? Why do you expect to be perfect at something before you even try to do it like a lot and just over and over and over, you know? That's just how learning works, you know? You get good at something by doing it over and over. A huge part of improving your accent is just building up your speaking confidence in general. So one thing that you could do, for example, to get there is to just practice speaking by yourself all the time. You know, you're learning these new words and these new concepts all the time, but later on, you know, when you have some alone time, or if you don't care about being alone, you know, while you're doing the dishes, if you're taking a walk, if you're, I don't know, doing some passive activity that doesn't require that much attention, like knitting, that's the example I always use, just talk to yourself. Or, you know, if you're in the shower, instead of singing in the shower, you can German in the shower. But I will say the thing about talking to yourself is it does get old after a while, because it's really best to speak to another person and get feedback if it's possible. And for this, I do classes with Lingoda. So Lingoda is an online language school that teaches German as well as a handful of other languages. In German, though, you can go straight from A1, so complete beginner, all the way up to C1, which is like crazy advanced. So they have a full German course pretty much. And the classes really focus on spoken communication, acquiring new vocabulary. And there are a lot of speaking prompts in the classes where the teachers, which are all native level teachers, by the way, they will prompt you to try new concepts, try new words, and just, you know, speak. That's the point of language at the end of the day. And yes, taking classes can seem super daunting, especially for the purposes of improving your pronunciation. I don't know why, but pronunciation just has this chokehold on everybody. But Lingoda has both small group classes and personal one-on-one classes. So in these small group classes, it's never more than like 5 people at a time. I've never had more than 5 people in a class. You have room, you know, to learn new things and practice speaking without all of the focus and all of the pressure being on you. And, you know, that really helps me not to feel so nervous when producing the language, because still, after almost like 10 years, yes, I'm still nervous to speak German. But when the time comes where you feel a bit more confident and you do want that specialized, like private attention, they still have private classes. I think that's what I really like about Lingoda, is that the learning experience is so flexible and customizable for what you need to learn a language. I also take classes whenever, wherever I want. It's all 24/7 online, so I can really learn on my own schedule. And sometimes that means taking a class at 10 p.m. because I decided at 9:50 that I wanted to take a class, you know. But for pronunciation specifically, one of the best things that Lingoda offers, one of the best features, is that you get personalized feedback from the teachers after every single class. The teacher tells you what you did well and what you can improve on, and, you know, that's obviously really helpful for improving and eventually mastering your pronunciation. If I could give you one piece of advice, my friend, I would strongly recommend that you try out Lingoda. Just give it a try. Es hat wirklich Wunder bewirkt, nicht nur für mein Deutsch, sondern auch für mein Französisch. Ich habe das in einem anderen Video erwähnt. So if you'd like to try it, I left you a link in the description, or you can just use my code ALICE25 off to get $25 off. Wow, see how that works? Now, here comes the topic that everybody's most curious about. Die Grammatik. Grammar! God damn it. God gram it. I want to talk about all of the grammar stuff at once. You know, the cases, the articles, all of it, because it doesn't really make sense to be like, here's how you learn the cases, here's how you learn the articles. I think grammar study when it comes to German just has to have these certain mindsets, no matter what you're doing. I see German learners committing these 2 critical errors time and time again since the history of the beginning of time. And these 2 errors, they almost always come as a pair. Overloading on grammar, especially at the beginning, and learning grammar just through rote memorization and not practicing it in context. Capital sins, in my book. Before people start learning German, or when they do start, they kind of quickly figure out that German grammar is kind of complex. Or, you know, they find out that grammar is kind of something to be worried about. Because it's crazy, you know, suddenly you hear all these terms flying around like Deklination, Nebensatz, like articles, cases, and people panic and they suit up and they get really serious and they just start front-loading all of this grammar stress as beginners. When in fact, there's plenty of time for you to space out all of that grammar stress along the entire length of your German learning journey. I see them front-loading all of the grammar stress, they're studying tons of grammar, and they're trying to speed run it with rote memorization methods, so like flashcards. I see German learners so often with these article charts. You are not going to learn a goddamn thing from this. You are not going to learn declension by staring at this hunk of boxes and trying to memorize it. I don't care how color-coded it is. Like, really? Every time you're in a conversation, you're gonna close your eyes and visualize this chart and be like, okay, der Hund, the dog. No, bro, nobody's doing that. No, you're gonna learn these articles correctly and make them come naturally by using them in sentences over and over again, getting it wrong, and eventually getting it right. That's just how learning works. That's how learning anything works. You know, you ride a bike, you fall off, you scrape your knee, and then you learn to do it right. You're baking cookies. You have to burn the cookies first before you make them well. Okay, you can look at the chart like 3 times. I'll allow that and then put it away. I don't want to be a dictator. I think it can be good to maybe like, initially see all the different types of articles and the way that they change. But my point is grammar cannot be speed run and it cannot be learned through rote memorization alone. You have to practice it in action and see how the grammar works and how it does not work. So instead, what will help you to learn and master German grammar eventually is by balancing what I call hard learning or like drilling and balancing that with speaking practice to reinforce what you've studied. So hard learning, what I mean by that is just when you initially learn a new grammar topic. So you are learning either from like a book or a website or a YouTube video or something and you're taking notes. You're learning this content for the first time. Here she is. I mostly did this with 2 resources. This book, German Grammar Drills by Ed Zwick. This book is as old as time. I've been mentioning this book on my channel for like 5 years. It's a good book, god darn it. And also Lingolia, which is a website with free exercises and free explanations. And then after you've done your hard learning, speaking practice is the chance to put everything into context and into practice that you've been learning and drilling. All you have to do is balance these things better. The hard learning, the initial input, and the speaking or the writing, the output. And that is what will help you feel actual real progress with grammar. Practice what you learn. Quick tea break, hold on. Tea has been acquired, Schwarzer tea. Closing thoughts on grammar. I will say a lot of language learners, not just German learners, language learners, they have this belief that they need to master the grammar, they need to master the cases before they start speaking or taking speaking seriously in the language, rather than, seeing conversational practice as the outlet to review and go over these concepts that they've studied. This is the most important thing I'm going to say in this entire video. There are people who see output in a language, speaking or writing, as the result of a certain amount of input in a language, rather than seeing input and output as coexisting exercises that you need to shuffle in between when you're learning a language. In language learning, everything, like every skill flows into the next. There is no separation. There is no sequence of language skills where you have to be good at one before you even think about starting or doing another. And, I should mention this, when it comes to German grammar, just try to maintain a positive attitude. Do not let the difficulty of German grammar overtake your entire learning experience or like flavor it too much, because it's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth. A quick metaphor, food for thought. As a recent immigrant to Germany, as a person drowning in paperwork and deadlines, I now see a really interesting parallel between grammar and the bureaucratic process. With German grammar, I always had the mindset of like, this is just something I have to dedicate myself to and I have to get through and I have to just show up for consistently so that I can fully enjoy what the language has to offer. And now, similarly, years later, I've moved to Germany and I'm in the middle of all this bureaucracy, the Anmeldung, my visa, the whole shebang. And I've kind of adopted a similar mindset where I'm like, this is just something I have to dedicate myself to for now. It's something that I have to push through and just work on consistently so that I can later fully enjoy the full spectrum of what the country, the culture, and what the people have to offer, which is this, apparently. Kidding. It's been great. It's my first couple weeks here and I just love it here. But I just wanted to say, so if you're in a similar position where you maybe want to move to Germany or a German-speaking country one day, maybe my little metaphor can be of, solace to you in this trying time with the grammar. You know what? Now that I'm on this like words of wisdom kind of kick, I want to stay on it. So let me pass on the biggest tip that from me to you as a German learner to another, this has saved me so much heartbreak. Don't worry about shit that does not concern you. You could theoretically apply this to anything, just as a life lesson, but what I'm talking about specifically are regional accents and dialects, because I get this question a lot of like, Elise, what dialect of German should I learn? Should I learn Hochdeutsch or should I also learn, this regional dialects? And people sometimes, they feel panic if in theory they couldn't understand every person from all over Germany and Austria and the whole shebang. When it comes to these things, I tend to just take the mindset where I think about my native language. Can I understand every single dialect and every single native speaker in my native language? No. So why should that apply to this foreign language that I'm learning? Why do we hold ourselves to these really high, like weird standards as second language learners? I don't understand the Scouse accent from the UK. I find Indian English really hard to understand a lot of the time. No, but I don't live in regions with a lot of speakers of these dialects and with these accents. I don't interact with people on a daily basis in my, social life, job, anything like that with people who speak these variants. So if you're panicking about not being able to understand every single German native speaker as a second language learner, just know that I don't either. And I've been in this game way longer than you. People from Munich, can't understand them. People, Schweizerdeutsch, can't understand it. But I don't live in these places, so I don't need to know them. But if you do live in these places, if your job, for example, is full of Swiss German speakers and there's a reason that makes this dialect or this accent relevant in your life, then you should concern yourself with it. There's no point in trying to chase all the dialects and all the accents of a language because that's not even a reality of native fluency. So why are you holding yourself to that standard? So I guess my advice to you when it comes to accents and dialects in German is, unless you're trying to live your best German countryside life, just stick to High German for now and save yourself the wrinkles and the hair loss. Jesus. Love you guys lots, and I hope this helped. Tschüssi!